his brother and his girl went to like 10 different African countries, didn't get kidnapped, didn't get macheted, nothing crazy. They got incredible stories and they, are just so positive about Africa. I was like, I got to see what the real is, right?
Hey, Jaime Woods, we here to travel and motivate. No curry, we just trying to keep our minds in a golden state. We answer to nobody but the Lord, we control our fate. Too many things to see just to sit in a hole and bake. We growing, ayy.
Yo, what's happening, everybody? It's the world traveling, grandstanding, money making, girlfriend taking, captain of the game, your favorite uncle, the incomparable Jay Focus in the building. Let's go.
Remember, guys, you got to stay focused. Remember to get focused. How's everything in Africa, my friend?
Hey, man, everything is everything. The sun is shining. The women are walking by. It's a vibe, man. It's very hard to describe it if you've never been here before, but it's just positive energy all around you.
So Jay, let's talk about Africa. So what made you go to Africa in the first place? What inspired you to go back over there?
Like a lot of brothers from the States, unless you have a direct family member living in Africa, it's not going to be one of the first couple places you're going to think to go to, right? Most people are going to go to something nearby, which is going to be Mexico, it's going to be Canada, it's going to be Jamaica. Like 90% of the people I talk to, when they first start traveling, it's going to be one of those three countries, maybe a different Caribbean island, but you know what I'm saying. Places in North America that are close, convenient to get to is where most people start off at. I'm no different. I started off in North America and Latin America, actually working my way further and further south, all the way till you get to, so you can't go anymore, right? Argentina, Chile, and that's it, right? And so from there, I was like, I haven't been to Asia. I'm kind of like, I wanted to be well-rounded. And I was like, I spent all this time in Latin America, which I love, but the world is so much bigger than that. I did the Philippines and Thailand. And then I was like, all right, well, I haven't been to Europe. I got to cross the pond, as they call it. So I started going out that way and then, double back to Asia here and there. And I was just like, you know what? There's this huge part of the map that I don't know anything about. I was talking to this brother and he was traveling with his white girlfriend and I was like, hold on. This brother and his girl went to like 10 different African countries, didn't get kidnapped, didn't get macheted, nothing crazy. They got incredible stories and they, are just so positive about Africa. I was like, I got to see what the real is, right? So at the time I was living in Spain and I found a really cheap flight. That's one of the great things about Spain that people may not know is that, Europe in general, you can get flights for a lot cheaper than you can in some other parts of the world. And I found a really cheap flight to go to Ethiopia. So Ethiopia was incredible. When the plane landed, I had all these emotions. Like, are they going to accept me? Are they going to, feel some type of way? Like, what are you doing here? I landed and everyone was really nice. Now, of course, they aren't as outgoing as Americans are and their English isn't going to be as good as Americans. So don't expect like them to just rush you and be like, welcome home. Like, no, it's not going to be that energy, but they're going to be very respectful to tourists, especially ones that look like they belong to the continent. That's been my experience anyway. And after that experience being so positive, I was like, all right, I got to see another country. Like, was this just the outlier? Or are most African countries going to be very accepting? So from there, I went to Kenya and Uganda. I did them back to back because they're neighbors. So they had something called the East African visa. So what that allows you is you pay one fee and it allows you to travel Rwanda, Uganda, and Kenya for, I think, $100 for like 3 months or something like that. So that's one issue that is worth mentioning is a lot of African countries do have different visa procedures when in Latin America, you don't really deal with that. Like American passport, you're good to go 9 times out of 10. Brazil, they were talking about they were going to bring back the visa, but they haven't done it yet. So, but that being said, in Africa, sometimes you do have to pay for visas. So that's one thing to be aware of. But all that to say, it was an incredible experience going to the next couple African countries. And then I was hooked. Then I said, I got to see more and more and more. So that's how I started J Focus traveling in Africa and not just other parts of the world.
I like what you said, man, because you took it almost as like, I remember when you said that, all right, I've been to South America, I've been all around North America, but there's so much more to the world. It's almost like you're challenging yourself. You're like, yeah, man, I can go anywhere. I need to go everywhere, you know? And that's great, man, because I think I mentioned earlier, you've been to what, 80 countries now? 80 countries?
Yeah, that's right. It's around 80, 81, 82, somewhere around there, but it's definitely I crossed that threshold, right?
Yeah, like most brothers haven't even touched a fraction of that. You know, I think I've been to a little over 12 or around there. So I'm nowhere near where you're at. You know what I mean? So I got to get to
Sure.
your level, you know?
Hey man,
But
you got time.
yeah, you know me, I got time, you know what I mean? I just got to make sure I get my money right and all that. I'm stable in other aspects of life before I can start really backpacking around the world. Which is something I want to do in the future, by the way. But Jay, so in terms of because you said you've been to East and South Africa, right? So how does Africa stack up to the rest of the continents you've been to?
Okay, so I've been to East Africa, Southern Africa, and the North. I've been a little bit in the North. I've been to Egypt and Morocco as well. Just for
Oh,
the
okay.
record, and just a tiny bit of West Africa. Like currently, I'm actually in Western Africa, you could call it. Um, so I'm exploring more and more. But sorry, what was the question again? You said how does it compare to the other parts of the world?
Yeah.
Um, so the thing is, when you look at Africa, you got to take it as more or less individual countries. Now, it is a region, so there are going to be certain similarities. Like, for example, if you're in Latin America, Costa Rica and Mexico, they're different, but they're not that different. But if you expand that, you could talk about Cuba and then talk about Argentina, and they're vastly different, right? They're all in the region of Latin America, but to really generalize them as being the same thing would be kind of crazy. One thing that you do have in Latin America, though, is the shared language. So, with the exception of Brazil, all of the Latin American countries speak Spanish. You could talk about the South uh, American countries that are outliers, but those usually aren't considered part of Latin America. The ones that speak like Dutch and French, the Guyanas over there, but nobody really thinks about them. So generally, with one language, Spanish, and a second language, Portuguese, you can do everything, which is a blessing, right? Africa is humongous, man. It's 54 countries. So you've got so much variation when it comes to language, culture, etc., that when you finally arrive, you'll realize that like it's crazy to kind of just group it up like they're all Africans when um it's really hard to say that. You know what I mean? Because their lives are so different, the conditions are so different. But I will say generally, East Africa, you're going to be able to move around pretty well with just English. And the same thing in Southern Africa, because you had British colonies, you had Kenya, you had Uganda, Rwanda, they speak a little bit of English. In Southern Africa, almost all of those countries had some contact with the UK, right? So whether that's South Africa, whether that's Namibia, um, what else is over there? Like Malawi, Zimbabwe, all of those have touched the British Empire. So language isn't going to be too much of an issue for your day to day if you speak English. So there are advantages and disadvantages because I know a lot of brothers who go to Latin America and they're like, oh man, I got to speak Spanish. I don't know Spanish, or oh man, I got to speak Portuguese. Like I only know 4 words of Portuguese, but when you land in Johannesburg, when you land in Cape Town, when you land in Nairobi, you can hit the ground running. You don't have to think about anything. No Rosetta Stone, no Duolingo, none of that stuff. Now, of course, anywhere it helps you to know a little bit of the local language because they do have their native languages still. But in those countries I named and a couple more, English is more than enough to get by.
Wow. And you know what? Because I have a friend that's from Nigeria, and one of the biggest misunderstandings that I had about Africa, because I'm not too knowledgeable in Africa, and I won't lie about that. That's why I brought one of the pros in, you know what I mean? One of the experts, Jay Focus, to come in to talk about it, you know, and I'm sure there's many other brothers who have an expertise in Africa. But one thing that I kind of find out like a year ago or so was my friend from Nigeria who works with me. We were talking about Africa, and we're talking about Nigeria, the culture, all that. And she had told me that pretty much everybody in Nigeria speaks English. And I was like, is English a national language there, or how does it work? She said, yeah, it's a national language. Like, everyone speaks it over there. And it's crazy because I met other Africans and they speak English, better English than I do. You know what I mean? And yeah,
Yeah,
so it goes to show that English is a big thing out there. And now you also confirm that there's a lot of other places that do speak English as well, and you can hit the ground running. So that is a big pro when it comes to, I would assume, when it comes to visiting Africa, the fact that they don't really have much of a language barrier, depending on where you're at, of course, in the continent.
sure. Yeah, I think our schools in the States kind of did a disservice to us. What's good, Ozzy? Yeah, our
What's
schools
up,
in the
Ozzy?
States, man, our schools in the States, they did a disservice to us because they don't teach us history beyond European stuff and some stuff that happened in the Americas. So we don't realize that Nigeria was colonized by the British. Ghana was colonized by the British. Tanzania, I'm not sure, but lots of countries, man. They were getting it on, man, with the colonization all over the world. So a lot of places they have a very long history of speaking English. Now I will say that accents are going to be thicker than a snicker. Like, it is going to be hard sometimes, depending on the country. I don't want to do any Trevor Noah impressions right now, but you know what I'm saying. Their English is English, but they'll use different words. They'll throw British things at you.
Right.
They'll be like, take the lift. And you'll be like, the lift? You mean the elevator? And they'll be like, I guess, you know what I mean? So yeah, they use a couple of different words. They tend to lean more to the British words, but, it's still the same language at the end of the day. It's like a Chileno can speak to someone in Madrid and it's not a problem, even though it's a different language. They have different words, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that is a good, baked in benefit, I guess. I hate to say it, but the history of colonization does make, communication easier around the world. You know, whether we're talking about the former French empires, the former Spanish ones, or the former, British ones, the fact that you can just go from one to the other 300 years later or however many years later and just communicate with people is a nice advantage.
Exactly, man. And that's why I'm actually learning Portuguese as we speak, because I'm trying to be able to go to some of these countries like Brazil,
Yeah.
of course, Portugal. And of course, I did see your recent video because I had a feeling one of the African countries spoke Portuguese. I know Cape Verde, I believe, speaks Portuguese, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yeah.
I saw your video on, was it Angola? Do Angolan people or Angolese, I don't know what they go by. Oh, do they speak Portuguese over there?
Yeah, Angolan people, they actually do speak Portuguese. It was also a former Portuguese colony. Same thing with Mozambique. You have Mozambique, which borders South Africa, also former, Portuguese colony, and the culture is still pretty strong there. So if you guys check out my channel, you can see videos on Angola. You can see Mozambique, both former Portuguese speaking countries. I speak a little bit of Portuguese. You might see me flex a little bit in some of the videos. I might spit a couple bars just so y'all know it's real. Like, oh, he really does this. I have one conversation where I'm talking, just walking around, and I run into a group of students, and they're really struggling to speak with me in English, and I'm just like, just say it in Portuguese, and they're just like their faces get big. So that was a really cool moment that I got to capture on film. It happens many times that I don't get to get it on film, so I appreciated that, and I think if you're curious about those countries in Africa, you will see that on my channel and you'll get a lot from it.
I saw you, man. I saw you in that video. I'm like, wait a second. Jay knows Portuguese, but then again, I was like, all right, he spent some time in Brazil. I would assume he knows a little bit of Portuguese, but that's crazy. So, Portuguese, English, I'm assuming Spanish.
Sure.
What don't you know, man? What don't you know, Jay?
Man, it would be nice to know Russian, because like when you get to the Russian part of the world, like
Mm-hmm.
not only Russia, but like the former Soviet places, like
Yep.
their English is trash, generally trash. So like, you're thinking of like Kazakhstan, you're thinking of, certain parts of Latvia, Belarus, et cetera, trash English. So if I knew, Russian, that would kind of unlock like the last piece of the puzzle as far as like 10 or 11 countries in the world. But, you got to pick and choose. I can't do it all. So,
I know a little Russian, Privyet как дела, хорошо, нет, да. I know a little. I
okay.
dated a Russian girl. I
Okay.
dated a Russian girl. You know what I mean?
1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. A little
All right.
something.
I see, a little something, something. But the thing is, this is the way I look at it is North America, if you know English and Spanish or mostly English, you should be good. In South
Sure.
America, if you know Spanish, you'll be good. In Europe, honestly, Western Europe, we'll stick to Western Europe. Western Europe, if you know English, you could pretty much navigate almost anywhere.
Oh, yeah, for
Eastern
sure.
Europe, on the other hand, Eastern Europe, with those, former Soviet Union countries, Russia, Ukraine,
Ukraine.
and
Yeah.
Ukraine Ukraine and Russia and Russian languages are two different languages. They're two different languages, but at the same time, it's similar. So it's kind of like if I were to like compare it, it would be kind of like Spanish and Portuguese, to where it's two different languages, but it can kind of understand each other. That's what I would
Yeah,
compare Russia and
they're
Ukraine.
cousins.
Yeah, they're cousins, exactly. So as long as you know Russian and Eastern Europe, you'll be good. In Asia, you know Mandarin, English, you'll be good. And that's the way I view it. Those are really the main languages that you should
Absolutely.
learn as a traveler.
I can't say it any more than that, man. You took the words
Yeah.
out of my mouth.
That's just an observation that I made from my travels, and you've traveled way more than I have, bro. So
The
I'm just
only
glad. What was it?
Oh no, I was just going to say the only caveat I would add to that is if you learned French on top of that, then you're golden.
Oh
Because
yeah.
the French speaking world is the same way where they don't really learn English like that, or if they do, it's like at a very basic level. And that's true in Africa as well. A lot of people don't know this, but there's probably, I want to say 12 or 13 countries in Africa where French is the official language. Morocco, French is way above English. I mean, of course, the younger generation, just due to globalization, is learning more English, but French would take you much further in Morocco, Tunisia, lots of places. Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, Madagascar. We could go on and on and on. So yeah, I
Wow.
think really for the traveler, I'd say the three main languages, or four main languages, but in this order, I would put the languages in this order to like learn these, and you could travel the world and be good anywhere, right? I would say number one is Spanish. I would say number two, if you mess with Eastern Europe and stuff, then I would say Russia would be number two. Then I would say three, French, and I would say four, Portuguese. And the only reason why I put Portuguese before French is because if you already know Spanish, of course it's not the same as Portuguese, but it's enough where people will meet you halfway. Where if you don't know French, nobody's really going to meet you halfway. You just don't know French, and that's it. You know what I'm saying?
No, I love that, man. I have the same opinion as you do, man. If you're going to learn a language, make sure it's a language that's widely spoken and not a language that's just specific to one country. Like, for example, I like Turkey and all, but no offense to them, I have no urge or motivation to learn Turkish because besides Turkey, where are you going to really use that? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
that's
that's the
why I'm
same with
studying Portuguese.
Yeah, that's the thing with Polish. I mean, we could go on down the list of like, yeah, it's an important language there, but as soon as you leave those borders, like it just evaporates. It's like if you studied Italian, like when you leave Italy, where is that useful?
Yep.
Nowhere.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, Italian is so similar. It's another Latin language. So when you're talking about Latin languages, I mean, there's Spanish, Italian, French, Portuguese. They all kind of sound similar to one another to a way. Now, French, I would say, compared to the other ones, is much more different compared to Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese. So I still do recommend you guys learn French, and French is a language I know a little bit of. After I learn Portuguese, that'll be the next language I'm diving into.
Sure.
But Italian, not really necessary. If you go to Italy, a lot of people speak English in Italy, and if they don't, you can get away with your little Spanish or Portuguese or
Oh yeah,
whatever. So,
absolutely. Yeah, they like to speak Spanish too, so you won't have issues. I remember I was in Sevilla. We talked about Sevilla on the last stream, and there were these Italian tourists. You know, they were older. They were like I guess in their late 50s or something. And I think we were riding on a bus or something, and they were asking me like some questions, and they were speaking their best attempt at like I don't even know what you would call it. I was going to say Portuñol, but it's not Portuguese. Whatever you call Spanish and Italian mix. They were trying to like speak
oh, I
a
don't know about
version,
that.
like a mix of it. Yeah, I don't even know what you would
I
call
don't
it.
know what the word is. Yeah.
Italian. I don't even know what you would call it, man. But they were trying to speak to me their broken Spanish Italian, and I could understand them. Like I'm not going to speak Italian back because I don't know it, but I could understand what they were saying, and I was easily able to direct them and help them go along their way. And that wasn't the only time that's happened. Many times. Yeah, so I wouldn't recommend Italian unless like you're actually planning to live in Italy. Like you're like, okay, I want to base my business in Rome or wherever else. Then yeah, it's going to be useful for you on that level. But other than that, I would leave it way below the other languages that I mentioned.
Yeah, man. I think is it Portuliano? I don't know. I'm making up random names. Portuliano. I don't know. It kind of sticks. But yeah, no, you're right, man. So yeah, guys, like coming from someone, and Jay can attest to this, but coming from someone that is learning a new language as we speak, it's very stressful. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done. Like I feel stupid like 98% of the time because they're talking to you, and like the thing is, Jay, like it's sometimes you think you got it, and then you'll be talking to someone else, whatever the case is, and they'll be speaking to you in that language, and then you start thinking to yourself, "Damn, maybe I don't got it after all. I thought I had it, but I actually don't." And then you
Yeah, I've
feel
been there.
stupid. Yeah,
I've been there many times, man. I was there earlier today. Like I was mixed in languages because, like you mentioned, the Latin languages are so similar. I was speaking three of them at once, not on purpose, but they still understood me. That's what matters. Um, but yeah, it is what it is, right? It's part of the process. It's part of the fun, getting out of your comfort zone.